Name is Brian Quinosha from BSU-111, and I will recite the 10 juries. Feminist juries. Feminist juries focus on gender differences in power as a source of crime. This juries addresses two issues: why are males more involved in most forms of crime than females, and why do females engage in crime? Most juries of crime were developed with males in mind. Feminist argues that the causes of female crime differ somewhat from the causes of male crime. Gender differences in crime are said to be due largely to gender differences in social learning and control. Females are socialized to be passive, subservient, and focus on the needs of others. Further, females are more closely supervised than males, partly because fathers and husbands desire to protect their property from other males. Related to this, females are more closely tied to the households and to child-rearing tasks, which limits their opportunities to engage in many crimes. The second is the integrated juries. Several jurists have attempted to combine certain of the above juries in an effort to create integrated juries of crime. The most prominent of these integrations are those of Terence P. Thornberry and Delbert S. Elliott and Associates. Elliott's jury states that strain and labeling reduces social control. For example, school failure and negative labeling may threaten one's emotional bond to conventional others and investment in conventional society. Low social control, in turn, increases the likelihood of association with delinquent peers, which promotes the social learning of crime. Thornberry attempts to integrate school and social learning theories. Like Eliot, he argues that law control at home and at school promotes association with delinquent peers and the adoption of beliefs favorable to delinquency. Thornberry, however, also argues that most of causes of crime have reciprocal effects on the another. For example, low attachment to parents increases the likelihood of association with delinquent peers. And association with delinquent peers reduce attachment to parents. Likewise, delinquency affects many of its causes. For example, it reduces attachment to parents and increases association with delinquent peers. Next is labeling theory. The above theories examine how the social environment causes individuals to engage in crime, but they typically devote little attention to the official reaction to crime. That is to the reaction of the police and other official agencies. Labeling theory focuses on the official reaction to crime and makes a rather counterintuitive argument regarding the causes of crime. According to labeling theory, official efforts to control crime often have the effect of increasing crime. Individuals who are arrested, prosecuted and punished are labeled as criminals. Other then view and treat these people as criminals, and this increases the likelihood of subsequent crime for several reasons. Labeled individuals may have trouble obtaining legitimate employment, which increases their level of strain and reduces their stake in conformity. Next is the social disorganization theory. The leading sociological theories focus on the immediate social environment like the family, peer group, and school. And they are most concerned with explaining why some individuals are more likely to engage in crime than others. Much recent theoretical work, however, has also focused on the larger social environment, especially the community and the total society. This work usually attempts to explain why some groups, like communities and societies, have higher crime rates than other groups. In doing so, however, this work draws heavily on the central ideas of control, social learning, and strain theories. Social disorganization theory seeks to explain community differences in crime rates. The theory identifies the characteristic of communities with high crime rates and draws on social control theory to explain why these characteristics contribute to them. Next is the self-control theories. Self-control is indexed by several personality traits. According to Gottfredson and Hirschi, people who lack self-control will tend to be impulsive, insensitive, physical, risk-taking, short-sighted, and nonverbal. It is claimed that the major cause of low self-control is ineffective child-rearing. In particular, low self-control is more likely to result when parents do not establish a strong emotional bond with their children and do not properly monitoring and sanction their children for delinquency. Certain theorists also claim that some of the traits characterizing low self-control have biological as well as social causes. Gottfredson and Hirschi claim that one's level of self-control is determined and early in life and is then quite resistant to change. Further, they claim that low self-control is the central cause of crime. Other types of control and other causes of crime are said to be unimportant once level of self-control is established. Data do indicate that low self-control is an important cause of crime. Data, however, suggests that the self-control does vary over the life course and that other causes of crime are also important. For example, Samson and Loeb demonstrate that delinquent adolescents who enter satisfying marriages and obtain stable jobs develop a strong stake in com- conformity are less likely to engage in crime as adults. Next is control theory. Strain and social learning theorists ask, why do people engage in crime? They then focus on the factors that push or entice people into committing criminal acts. Control theorists, however, begin with a rather different questions. They ask, why do people conform? Unless strain and social learning theorists, control theorists take crime for granted. They argue that all people have needs and desires that are more easily satisfied through crime than through legal channels. For example, it is much easier to steal money than to work for it. So in the eyes of control theorists, crime requires no special explanation. It is often the most expedient way to get what one wants. Rather than explaining why people engage in crime, we need to explain why they do not. Control theories describe the major types of social control or the major restraints to crime. The control theory of Travers Hirschi dominates the literature, but Gerald Patterson and Associates, Michael Gottfredson and Travers Hirschi, and Robert Sampson and John Loeb have extended Hirschi's theory in important ways. Rather than describing the different versions of control theory, an integrated control theory and draws on all of their insights is presented. Next is the social learning theory. Why do people engage in crime according to social learning theory? They learn to engage in crime primarily through their association with others. They are reinforced for crime. They learn beliefs that are favorable to crime, and they are exposed to criminal models. As a consequence, they come to view crime as something that is desirable or at least justi- justifiable in certain situations. The, the primary versions of social learning theory is criminology is that theory is that of Ronald Akers and the description that follows draws heavily in his work. Akers' theory, in turn, represents as elaboration of Edwin Sutherland's differential association theory. Also see the related work of Albert Bandura in psychology. According to social learning theory, juveniles learn to engage in crime in the same way they learn to engage in conforming behavior through association with or exposure to others, primary or intimate groups like the family and peer groups have an especially large impact on what we learn. In fact, association with delinquent friends is the best predictor or delinquency other than prior delinquency. However, one does not have to be in direct contact with others to learn from them. For example, one may learn to engage in violence from observation of others in the media. Strain theory. Why do people engage in crime according to strain theory? They experience strain or stress. They become upset, and they sometimes engage in crime as a result. They may engage in crime to reduce or escape from the strain they are experiencing. For example, they may engage in violence to end harassments from others. They may steal to reduce financial problems. Or they may run away from home to escape abusive parents. They may also engage in crime to seek revenge against those who have wronged them. And they may engage in the crime of illicit drugs used to make themselves feel better. And uh, and now, this is the major types of strain. Agnew describes two general categories of strain that contribute to crime. 1. Others prevent you from achieving your goals. And 2. Others take things you value or presented you with negative or noxious stimuli. Next is the institutional anomy theory. Stephen Messner and Richard Rosenfield institutional anomy theory draws on control and social learning theories to explain the high crime rate in the United States. According to the theory, the high crime rate partly stems from the emphasis placed on the American dream. Everyone is encouraged to strive for monetary success, but little emphasis is placed on the legitimate means to achieve such success. It's not how you play the game, it's whether you win or lose. As a consequence, many attempt to obtain money through illegitimate channels or crime. Further, the emphasis on monetary success is paralleled by the dominance of economic institutions in the United States. Other major institutions, the family school, and major institutions and the political system are subservient to economic institutions. Last is the sociological theories. This entry focuses on the three major sociological theories of crime and delinquency. First is the strain, second social learning, and the third is the control theories. It then briefly describes several other important theories of crime, most of which represent elaborations of these three theories. Finally, efforts to develop integrated theories of crime are briefly discussed. All of the theories that are described explain crime in terms of the social environment, including the family, school, peer group, workplace, community, and society. These theories, however, differ from the another in several ways. They focus on somewhat different features of the social environment. They offer different accounts of why the social environment causes crime, and some focus on explaining individual differences in crime, while others attempt to explain group differences in crime. Yun lamang po. Again, ako po si Brian Q. Narshaw from BSC 1-11. Thank you, sir.